What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Ballion, back with another episode of the Sports Pod. And today, I'm going to give you a recap of the Jets and Giants season and tell you what they have to do this offseason to get back to sort of relevancy. Because to be honest with both teams, there's not really a short answer, and there's not really a way that they're real contenders next year. I'll get into all of it on the other side of the intro. Hit it.
DiVincenzo at three. Bang! Bang!
At the wall, he jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career.
All right, getting into the episode, and let's start with the Jets. Let's start with Gang Green. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to give you what they did well this season, what went wrong, and then I'm going to give you what they have to do this offseason. So let's start with the good from this season. They're bringing in an outside source to assist with their head coach and GM search. They're bringing in the 33rd team. They're the ones interviewing all these head coaches. They're the ones interviewing all these general managing candidates. And I like what they've been doing. There is a long list of candidates that the Jets have brought in. I mean, it is absolutely extensive. They have, it's been Rex Ryan. I don't know what's going to go on with Rex Ryan. If I'm the Jets, I would stay away from Rex Ryan. All right, here's the list. Mike Vrabel, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Joe Brady, Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, Brian Grease, Aaron Glenn, Vance Joseph, and Bobby Slowick. And this is just a start. I mean, there's going to be more names on here. That's probably the vast majority of them, though. So for me with the Jets, I love that they're bringing in all these outside sources. It's a good thing, I think. And I'll get to this a little bit later. I think they should bring in a defensive-minded head coach. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But that's my pick. The other thing is, they've been pretty non-committal on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he'll be 42 during next season. I don't think you want that guy on your roster. And I know he showed you a lot in the season closer against the Miami Dolphins. And he had a solid season. He started all 17 games. But he's not the answer. Rex Ryan called it the Aaron Rodgers Country Club. Aaron Rodgers is not the guy for the Jets. It makes absolutely zero sense to bring him back. He's been nothing but a problem to the Jets. He's missing minicamp to go to Egypt. He's in his darkness retreat before he wants to come play for the Jets. I get he threw for 3,800 yards, almost 3,900, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. But he's not the answer. It's all the extracurriculars that go on off the field. That's the problem with Aaron Rodgers. It's not his on-the-field play, because that's always going to be top of the line. It's going to be, do you want to deal with all the extra stuff, the stuff that doesn't need to happen? That's the problem. That's where I lose it with Aaron Rodgers. That's where I can't get with it. It's not okay. And I love what the Jets have done. Not really committing to him in the future, and I think it was his last game. I think he will retire, but it is like, I don't know. It's if he does come back, you have to move off of him. And then the last thing I think they did well, because there's not much good for either of these teams. I think there's a longer bad list, especially for the Giants, but for the Jets, their running back room is pretty solid. I mean, you've seen Breece Hall can really produce for you in the past. You bring in Braylon Allen this year, he seems like a good pick. If you look at his rushing stats, 92 carries for 334 yards. And let's see how many touchdowns. And 2 touchdowns. I mean, there wasn't many touchdowns to go around. I mean, and then the receiving game, 19 catches for 148 yards and another touchdown there. So you get 3 touchdowns out of him. You get probably close to 500 yards from scrimmage. I think it's a successful rookie campaign for Braylon Allen, and I think the thing that they have to do well next year is mixing Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. And that's a hard thing to do when your special teams coordinator takes over as interim head coach not even halfway through the year. That's a hard thing to do because the special teams coach isn't used to coaching the offense. He's not even used to coaching a defense where he knows how his defense can get beat. He's used to kickoffs and punt returns and field goals and all these other auxiliary pieces. He's not used to coaching the main meat of the game. That's where I think it's just a hard thing to do. And so I think bringing in an actual head coach, and this is where maybe you can push for an offensive-minded guy. I would still like a defensive-minded guy for the Jets. But mixing Braylon Allen and Breece Hall is definitely going to be something that the Jets have to do moving forward. But for my take on it is that they have a bright future at the running back position. I'm going to look at Breece Hall's contract right now. I think he has another year, maybe two. And we'll see how that holdout contract situation goes with Breece Hall after we saw what happened with the Giants this year. I mean, not good to say the least. All right, so we're in 2024. Breece Hall has one more year on his rookie contract, making just under $2 million. His cap hit is 2.8. So the Jets aren't paying him too much, as he's still on his rookie deal, and then Braylon Allen, this is his rookie year, so he would have 3 more years left. That's pretty good. Their running back room is in a prime spot to be maybe the best aspect of the game. Maybe next year you bring in a defensive minded guy, you bring in a good offensive coordinator. This is a lot of with the coaches. It's a lot of where does the coach want to go. And I don't know if the top guys want to come to the Jets. It seems like a cursed franchise. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. So I don't know if the top guys want to come here. But maybe you get two of the better guys. Maybe you bring in Liam Cohen as your offensive coordinator, and you bring in, let's say, Brian Flores as your head coach. I don't think Liam Cohen's very realistic because he's already a coordinator. I don't know. I don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. It can't be Nathaniel Hackett and whatever mixing weird play calling they were doing last year. It's got to be a set guy. They've got to this is part of my offseason plan. They've got to fortify who's my offensive coordinator and who is my defensive coordinator, and that's not going to change next season. Those are my guys, and I'm riding with them for at least one season, and then you can see where you're at from there. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to be competitive next year. So why not just ride these guys for 1 year? And now let's get into some of the bad stuff. Why are so many guys that they're going to be paying a lot of money to, why were they playing in week 17, 18 when the season was out of hand? I mean, Quentin Williams has multiple years of control. Allen Lazard has another year. Garrett Wilson has another year. Breece Hall has another year. These are the top of the line guys. You don't want them tearing an ACL. You don't want them, I don't know. I don't even know. You see, this is in baseball, and just these major injuries that people are susceptible to. Football is a contact sport. It's a dangerous sport. But then even a guy like Breece Hall, he's torn his ACL in the past. You don't want to see, you don't want that to happen again. You want to really just make sure that you're just going through the motions and you're going to finish the season, and then you'll get better in the offseason. That's what you want to do in these kind of situations. That's what head coaches should be doing, I think, at least. And then another bad thing, it's I alluded to this earlier, but everything that went on off the field, the Madden ratings, Woody Johnson's son, Aaron Rodgers, just Aaron Rodgers as a whole, he has been nothing but a problem. The song that never ends, Aaron Rodgers, it's been a loop. The past 2 years at this point, because he got traded in March, we're a couple months away from 2 years. It has been nothing but a problem. He's done nothing good for your franchise. He got hurt 4 plays in last year, and I guess he played pretty well this year, but it didn't turn into wins. That is what it's supposed to be with Aaron Rodgers, and it wasn't. So him going to Egypt, him doing ayahuasca, that's unacceptable if you're losing games. If you're winning, it's a whole nother story. But the Jets are not winning. That's the problem. If they were winning, it's fine. But it's not because they're losing. And then some of the other bad stuff, I mean, it's just like the Jets not making the playoffs. The Jets not making smart roster moves. The Jets firing Robert Saleh 5 games into the season when he clearly wasn't the problem. Sometimes firing your head coach to give your team a kick in the butt, to get them going, to get them riled up, sometimes it's not the best move. And it doesn't seem like it was. It doesn't seem like it was for the Jets. It doesn't seem like they made a smart move by firing Robert Saleh, by mixing up the coordinator situation, because it didn't work. Like, if it worked, the Jets were still in, like, they were 2-1 at one point. I think they were 2-3 at that point. They had lost 2 straight games in a row. I mean, like, it's the Robert Saleh was not the problem. It was everybody else. And then another bad part, Hassan Reddick's holdout. That is just awful. Like, you trade for this guy. You traded Bryce Huff, who was a really good defensive lineman for you last year. Bryce Huff was one of the better defensive linemen in the sport. And you traded him away for a player that held out for close to half the season. Like, that doesn't make sense. And I understand that you were supposed to have a plan going into it. I understand that Bryce Huff was expected to play week 1. But you have to be sure of that. And if he's not ready to go week 1, you got to give him a little bit bigger contract. Because where's that money going to? It's not going anywhere. It's not. And it didn't make sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense. So that's the last thing I'm going to harp on with the Jets. Their roster moves and coaching situation from this past season. All right, let's get to the Jets' offseason plan. Find a way, step 1, find a way, any way possible, to get rid of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Again, Davante Adams, you traded a good amount to bring him here, and he wasn't good. Him and Aaron Rodgers seemed like they didn't know each other. They did that whole special appearance on Pat McAfee to introduce Davante. They did all this. Oh, we're coming back together. No, they sucked together. They lost a lot more games than they won. And for the Jets to bring in a guy, a highly touted receiver in Davante Adams, a guy that's been one of the best receivers in football, when he had an MVP quarterback, in Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to him. It worked, and it didn't work because you're the Jets. Just end the season, and thank God it's over, by the way. After this episode, I'm probably going to take a detox from New York football. I'll be talking playoff football, just nothing to do with the Jets and Giants for probably a couple months. Because this is just, I don't know. It was an awful season for both teams. But step 1, get rid of Adams and Aaron. Remove Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams from your roster any way possible. And I think getting rid of Aaron Rodgers is going to be a lot easier than it seems. Like, I think he's going to retire. So there you go. Right there, you have one step done. And then maybe you want to trade Davante Adams to the Giants. I wouldn't mind it if the Giants could get the quarterback they want. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I mean, so step 2, hire Thomas Dimitroff as your general manager and hire Ben Johnson as your head coach. Ben Johnson is going to be the best head coach of this class. He has a guy in Jared Goff that he's making look like a Super Bowl MVP level quarterback. An MVP level quarterback. Because Jared Goff this year, he's up there with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. The thing is, though, like, Jared Goff, he's not scrambling around. He's not extending plays. He's not getting out of the pocket, making ridiculous athletic plays. He's essentially a system quarterback, and I get he has a ton of pieces around him. But the Lions have found ways to put up 30-plus points pretty much every week. And they found ways to win 15 games and get the number 1 seed in the NFC. Ben Johnson's right in the middle of that. Aaron Glenn is right in the middle of that. I don't know. I think they're more vital to the team than Dan Campbell is. Obviously, Dan Campbell's guts going for it on fourth down is an extremely important part of the team. But I think the play calling is more important. And Ben Johnson's going to be the guy. I think he's going to be better than Aaron Glenn. Try to bring him into MetLife. The problem is, though, he's not going to come to MetLife. I highly doubt that that happens. I just don't see it happening. But those are the two guys. And if you're not going to get Ben Johnson, Brian Flores is the next guy I would like for the Giants. I think he would be the next best option. He's a defensive-minded guy. And then you bring in a solid offensive coordinator. And I don't know. If you're going to do that, I think bringing Aaron Rodgers back might not be the worst thing. And it might not be the absolute worst thing if like you can make him agree to a deal where it's like, listen, man, we're going to bring in a young quarterback. You can start, but if the wheels start to fall off, I mean, you gotta sit the bench and you gotta suck it up. That's gotta be the deal. That's gotta be the way it goes for the Jets. They've gotta and it doesn't have to go that way. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But if you're going to bring in a young quarterback, which I think they should, I think they should stay away from the veterans. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, only makes sense to get a new quarterback unless you're bringing in an offensive-minded guy and he's bringing in his guy. I don't think Mike Vrabel will come to the Jets just because I think he's like handpicked for the Patriots. Like the Patriots wouldn't have fired Gerard Mayo if they didn't know Mike Vrabel was coming to them. It wouldn't make sense for them. But the guy I think for the Jets, I think Thomas Dimitroff is definitely the best GM fit. We saw what he did with the Julio Jones, Matt Ryan Falcons. I think he could rekindle some of that here in New York. For the draft, I think they should stay at 7 and they should draft Will Campbell. I mean, they drafted Olu Fashanu top 10 last year. I think they should stick with the offensive line and draft Will Campbell this year. Right now, Tankathon has them drafting the edge out of Penn State. It's I'm blanking on the name. Abdul Carter out of Penn State is who Tankathon has the Jets drafting right now. I don't know if that's necessarily their most needed position. I think they have other holes that they need to fill more than that. And if you're going to bring in a rookie quarterback, you might as well keep him on his feet. So drafting Will Campbell probably isn't the worst thing. Number 4, out of the 5 steps I have listed out here, I have 5 for both teams. Do not sign Sauce Gardner to a long-term extension or like any sort of big contract. The regression I saw from Sauce Gardner this year was off the charts. I did not think it would be anything close to what it was coming into this season, but it is what it is. Sauce Gardner, he didn't know how to tackle. He didn't know how to make plays. He couldn't cover teams' number 1 guys. And that's what his job was coming into the year. He was supposed to be the top guy, the lockdown corner that didn't allow anything by him. But he was the opposite of that. He had a pretty bad year. Like he was a lower level of mediocre. That's how bad he was this year. I don't know about it, man. I don't think he deserves that big contract. So I'm going to stay away from that. And then the 5th step, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but fortify your offensive and defensive coordinators. Make sure you have the guys that you want. Don't let a player choose their coordinators. Let the head coach choose the coordinators and stick with those guys. So those are my 5 steps for the Jets. That's pretty much their season recap and what they should do next. But up next is the G-Men in their 100th season, one of the worst seasons in franchise history, if not the worst. So it was kind of hard to find some positives here. But the first one I have, the early returns on this draft class seem to be that it's a pretty good class. Neighbors franchise record in catches with 109. Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin look like they're going to be really solid for years to come in that secondary. Drew Phillips was highest PFF rated safety, I think, or corner, I think, and for a couple weeks of the season. Tyrone Tracy looks like another piece that you could keep at least 4 years down the line. He'll be one of those guys that's getting like the same contract that Devin Singletary got this past season, where it's like it's not a huge contract, so maybe the Giants will keep him down the line, but it's too early to tell all of that stuff because it's 4 years down the line. I really like what Tyrone Tracy is, though. I think he can be a really solid piece for the future. So one of the two positives, really three positives, the third one's, I don't know. Like the draft class seems pretty good. It seems like Joe Schoen had a good draft. The problem with the draft is you passed on a quarterback that's going to the playoffs, and you passed on a second quarterback that had a chance to go to the playoffs coming into the week. And the third problem is you ruined your tank. You ruined your tank where you could have drafted a quarterback second overall in Jaden Daniels that would have taken you to a playoffs. That is on the Giants. That's not Joe Schoen's fault. That's Tommy DeVito's fault. Purely Tommy DeVito's fault. As much as fun as it was, it set the Giants franchise back at least one season, potentially more, if they miss on a quarterback this draft. And so getting to this draft, one of the positives with this draft, you have the third pick and you have a little bit of flexibility with it. I think you can move back. If I'm looking at Tankathon right now, you're at the 3 spot. I think the Raiders would trade up from 6. I think the Jags would trade up from 5. Maybe the Jets would trade up from 7 at max if they really fall in love with Travis Hunter. But other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I'm sold on the Browns and Titans both taking quarterbacks at this point, and I'm okay with it. I don't want the Giants to take Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I don't think either of them are going to be that great of NFL quarterbacks. I think there are better options for the Giants in this draft. So the second positive is that you have the third pick. You have a little bit of flexibility with it. Yeah, it might not be the worst thing. The other thing, Daniel Jones' contract is off the books. Whoa! Daniel Jones, we don't need you anymore. See you later. Please, never come back. Please. All right, let's get to the bad part now. This is an expansive list. You don't have a franchise quarterback, and you overpaid for Daniel Jones, which set your franchise back a couple years. But the thing at the time, I can't really be too mad at that because you had to pay Daniel Jones at that point. You had to pay him after he just won you a road playoff game in Minnesota, which isn't an easy place to go into and win a playoff game. He made something happen. He won a playoff game. That's not a road playoff game. That's not. You can't just let him walk after that. Like at the time, you had to pay him. You let Saquon walk, and he almost broke the single season rushing record. Clap it up for that. No, you had to pay Daniel Jones, but his contract was too massive. I think at some point you could have tapped out. $140 million was just too much. $140 million was way too much for Jones, and you missed out on Saquon by about $1.5 million, $2 million. It would have been so worth it. And I'm not saying he would have had the chance to break the record with the Giants because their offensive line sucked, but he's an awesome running back. Next negative, you won 3 freaking games. I mean, it speaks for itself. You're 3-14, picking 3rd overall. That's not a good thing. It means you sucked, which the Giants were absolutely awful. They were utterly abysmal this year. They were so bad. And I don't even know what to think of it. It was just, I don't know, it was just awful. It's awfulness on awfulness on awfulness the whole year. The next negative rather, the offensive line was terrible. Like I mentioned earlier, I mean, no quarterback standing back there could really stay up on their feet. The run game could have been more expansive with Tyrone Tracy if you had a better offensive line. There's so much you could do in the NFL with a good offensive line, and the Giants just don't have that. The Giants just don't have the offensive line that could carry them like some teams like the Eagles do. Because the Eagles are built off their offensive line. That's what they're built off of at the end of the day. And the Giants aren't built that way. I mean, not every team is going to be built that way. I'm saying I just need close to mediocre out of the offensive line. I mean, it was just so abysmal and so awful that it was, I don't know, there was just so much wrong with it. And then the last negative, I could have gone on longer, but I didn't want to. There are so many holes on this roster. I mean, you committed to Brian Daboll today. You committed to Joe Shane today. So you have your coach for probably the next 2 to 3 years, because he's going to take a quarterback in the draft, and you have your GM for the next 2 to 3 years. Problem is, the offensive line needs an essentially full revamp. The defense is not good enough. I mean, the secondary is so young. There's promise, but there's so many holes to be fixed. You need another receiver. I mean, Daniel Bellinger's your tight end. You need more. You need everywhere. Like, you can make a case that the Giants need another player at every position on the field besides Dexter. You could make a case that the Giants need a better player at every position except right tackle, where Andrew Thomas is, edge rusher, where Brian Burns is. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is a middle linebacker, and then a D lineman in Dexter Lawrence. And you still need a couple, at least one, probably 2 or 3 more defensive linemen. There's just so many places that they need to improve that even if you bring like a veteran quarterback like Sam Darnold into this mix, and I think Sam Darnold gets franchise tags, but even if you bring him into the mix, like, he's not going to be able to do anything with this roster. So he's going to be getting sacked in half a second every time. And he's the key. I guess he'll have places to throw the ball to, but like, there's a lot better options out there. All right, let's get to my offseason plan for the G-Man, for Big Blue. After such a disappointing year, I thought the Giants were going to be solid this year. I thought they were going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Maybe finish 7-10, 8-9, 9-8. That's what I thought they were going to be. But no, they sucked. Finished 3-14 with the 3rd pick. All right, step 1 of my offseason plan. Try to trade back to 3, from like 3 to 6, and draft Will Campbell. I know I said I want the Jets to draft him, but if you could take him before the Jets do, I would do it. I think it's too much of a stretch at 3. So you would have to trade back a little bit, but I think that's a valuable move. I think he's going to be real good, and I could end up eating my words on this one. Linemen are pretty unpredictable like that. I don't know. I like Will Campbell, but if you can't move back or you like Travis Hunter a lot, I would take him. You need so much. I think Travis Hunter will stick to receiver in the NFL, and he won't be a corner either. I know he said he wants to play both. I don't think the Giants will let him, and I think he's too small to play corner. So he's got to be a receiver, essentially. That's really the only spot I see him at. And if Daboll falls in love with him, if Mike Kafka likes him, why not take a chance on him? I mean, you don't pick at number 3 often. You might as well stand your ground and pick someone who has who has a really good chance of being good in Travis Hunter. Now, I mean, that's not that crazy to say. And then step 2, draft Jackson Dart in the 2nd round out of Ole Miss. He's essentially a blank canvas for Brian Daboll to go to work on. Jackson Dart can move around in the pocket. He's got arm strength. He's got accuracy. He's got the measurables. He seems like the perfect fit for this Giants team. I don't want to take one of the top guys in Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I don't think they're going to be good enough. I don't think they're going to pan out the way they should. But Jackson Dart, when paired with a vaunted quarterback whisperer in Brian Daboll, I think he can work. And I think he can be the Giants franchise quarterback. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And I think that's the pick for the Giants. Jackson Dart in the 2nd round. The problem is he might jump up draft boards, and the Giants might really have to finagle drafting him maybe in the late first round, mid first round, which could be a problem. But move mountains to draft Jackson Dart. That's where I'm at. But at the end of the day, if Brian Daboll likes somebody else, I'm with it. Daboll's the quarterback whisperer. He's the one that's supposed to be locked in with the quarterbacks. I'm going to be the first to tell you, I'm not the craziest analyst. I'm not the best guy to look to for these things. But I don't know. I like Jackson Dart. I like the way he did it at Ole Miss. But if Daboll likes somebody else, I'm with it. Step number 3, completely revamp your offensive line. Everyone besides John Michael Schmitz at center, Andrew Thomas, and maybe Jermaine Illuminor needs to get replaced. Evan Neal, please just do anything you can to get rid of Evan Neal. He is so bad. He could not play another snap for the Giants. Like, he is that bad. And the Giants are 3-14 bad. He doesn't deserve to be on an NFL roster. It is blasphemy that he has stayed in the league for this long. Like, how has he not been cut yet? But I think with Andrew Thomas, he needs a backup that can play 9, 10, 11 games a year because Andrew Thomas is constantly hurt. Like, I couldn't tell you the last time Andrew Thomas was on the field. I mean, did he make it past week 1 this year? It's annoying, but he's really good when he was good. He's good when he's on the field. That's the thing. He can play really well. So yeah, I mean, everybody except those 3 guys that I mentioned, JMS, Andrew Thomas, and Jermaine Illuminor, maybe Jermaine Illuminor. Those are the guys that need to be replaced. I don't know what else what you're going to do. I don't know who you're going to get. I don't have faces, names for you on the offensive line. But, that's it. Step number 4, add a veteran presence to this secondary. They showed a lot of promise this year. The Packers are expected to cut. They're expected to cut Jair Alexander. Maybe the Giants could scoop him up. I wouldn't leave that off the realm of possibilities. I think that's possible for the Giants to get Jair Alexander. I mean, you let Xavier McKinney walk to the Packers last year. That's awful. He was so good for them also. And, I think Jair Alexander, he's been a top defensive back in the league for multiple years at this point, and he would be a really good fit. And then the last thing I want the Giants to do this year, add a veteran wide receiver. If the Giants stand pat and draft Travis Hunter at 3rd overall, they will have 3 relatively young wide receivers in their top 3. Travis Hunter, Malik Neighbors, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Who is the veteran leading them? Who is the mentor? Maybe you bring in like an Allen Lazard if you want to keep it cheap. If you want to keep it simple, just sign an Allen Lazard, or I think you would have to trade for him. But you get one of those guys. You get an Allen Lazard, or maybe you could go if you want to make a big splash. Maybe you trade for Devontae Adams. I don't think that's crazy either. So I think those are the guys I want. I think could come to the next. I know it's 2 Jets options. I don't know what's DeAndre Hopkins' contract. Maybe you bring in someone like that. Let me see, DeAndre Hopkins, Spotrac, because he could be an option for the Giants. I mean, let's see. So this year in 2024. Yeah, he's an unrestricted free agent, but the Chiefs can void it for the next 3 years. So I think he'll probably end up as a free agent because I don't think he's done anything too crazy for them. But maybe that's the guy. There are always a couple like veteran wide receivers that have kind of fallen off. They're on the back end of their career that you could just scoop up for cheap. That's the kind of guy I want the Giants to take. And if you want to do that, you would have to draft Travis Hunter. And not necessarily. I think they could use a veteran wide receiver with whatever they do. That's never a bad thing. So that's what I think with the Giants and Jets. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a subscription and a follow down below. If you enjoyed, please consider liking. If you want to have your voice heard on the Sports Pod, dial the number 305-8073 and leave me a voicemail with your sports questions and takes, and I'll react to them in the next episode. And make sure you go check out all my social links in the description for more content. And last but not least, make sure you keep it locked with the Sports Pod.